Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's Dave Dobbs here. It's the, what is it, it's the 30th of April 2026, and we've just had, in the last video I talked about this and I said how I'm of a mind this is a flyby. World of Science posted it on the 19th of March 2026. Notice it's being seen from Italy. It's in my opinion, it's in the northern hemisphere. I know we could look at that and think it's a cloud, but what's interesting is that the way this is, we've actually flown by this rather than it's flown by us, and it's very odd because we see this shot here. This was posted 2 days ago on World of Science also, and it's this rainbow in the sky, and you can imagine that. Well, you can understand that when we see the full moon, or rather than we see the full moon, we can see it obviously in the night sky. It reflects the sun, and so we can see it. But when we get the new moon and it's right there, we can't see it for love nor money, because it hasn't got any kind of like even though it's up there and it's directly in our daylight sky, we're blinded by the sun, and it lights up our atmosphere in this blue sheen, which is basically from the outside. It looks, our Earth would look like a bright sun itself, because as the oxygen hits the as the photons, apparently as the photons hit the atmosphere, it splits O and O, as in O2. That process is creating ozone, and that creates this kind of light, this bright light, as a result of the photons hitting and causing this process. It creates this incredible bright light in itself, and we can't see past that bright light, so we can't see what's out there even when the moon's right there. But if there's some kind of atmosphere or gaseous cloud around an object, that can refract the light, and that in itself can cause a light. Obviously you've got all this dust up here which they're desperately trying to hide, so we know that they're definitely trying to conceal something with all their chemtrails and everything else like that, or whatever you want to call that. And there we see this kind of like something's up there, and it's causing this rainbow, but we obviously can't see the object directly. But we saw that Japan was here, and let's just think about the dates because we're going to use what's happening with it, because there's a pair of these objects, and we've seen two of them multiple times, and I talked about that in my last video. So let's just go to our date calculator for we're going to come back to that, because that is, what's the date there? That's 2026. Yeah, that is 2026. So so April, what did we say the date was for that? It was on April so we had a magnitude 7.7 that was on April the 7th, which I'm assuming is the same as that date, 1448, 20th of April. Then we've got this, the 23rd of April. We see Kilauea going off on the 23rd of April. And then we see Kilauea going again at the 9th of April. And we'll say that. So let's go back to our... So Kilauea starts going off on the 9th of April, which is basically at the time of the neat moon. And then we come up to the 20th, and we're getting quite close, much closer to, we're kind of just coming out of the new moon. And then we come to the 23rd. And do you remember on the 23rd, 24th, we had the big, also the big solar flares, as well as Kilauea going off again. Because I talked about Kilauea going off, and this would be indicative, especially at this kind of neat moon time in June. On June the 21st, because we've got the next flyby after this coming in. But we've just charted the movements of this object as we've actually gone past it, it affected first our third quarter moon, and then kind of in the middle section as we've been going past, and you know, as we've actually gone past the object itself. So basically, you know, what's happened is our moon, as it's going round the Earth, has first of all on the far side, if you like, on our leading edge as we're going round the sun. So as the moon comes around that edge and is in the third quarter phase, ready to come back round to new, it's this object has been basically there, kind of like, so it's affected the moon at that first point. Then the whole Earth has, if you like, gone past it, which is where we've seen the 7.7 earthquake in Japan, and then we get the first quarter moon, which was around about the 23rd, 24th of April. So you can see how the sequence of these, rather than it's overtaking us, we've actually overtaken it at this specific stage. And like I say, the next stage is going to be the next object is going to be on the it's going to be where last year we saw this object coming in on the 31st of July. These objects, they drop back one calendar month each year. And I can remember being in 2018, and we saw Kilauea going off on the 4th of May 2018. It was a long duration volcano. And these were, up until that stage, really quite rare to get super long duration volcanoes, and that was a 5-week non-stop release of magma from Kilauea, and we were seeing these incredible sightings, and that's when I learnt about, we were going through this same process with what I understand to be this object. Remember this object here? This is a shot that was taken by the cameraman at the US Masters Golf Tournament. So this would have been watched by millions and millions of people, seen as the cameraman commented on interesting, called it, well, that's an interesting cloud. That's all he could say. I mean, you can imagine millions of people watched that during the golf tournament because of the angle of the shot looking down the fairway. And no one could believe what they see. This is just like the days where we're supposedly the ships of Christopher Columbus turning up. You know, the discovery, the supposed discovery of the Americas, and they say that the indigenous couldn't see the ships for looking because they just didn't know how to perceive that. I don't really believe that. But I could see how we could believe that when we ourselves can't see what is directly in front of us, and has been. I mean, I've been charting this since 2014, but I've been bringing shots in way before that, and looking at not just looking at the shots, but looking at the seismic data, looking at the big storms, and all the rest of it that goes with these movements. And but we were in 2018 right up to 2021, 22, sort of 23. We were just watching this whole system from May to go to June, July, and move right round, but go one calendar month further forward, because this moves one calendar month further forward each year, as the pair go one calendar month backward each year. And so they come back, they both, the pair come back to their same place every 12 years. This big blue one comes back to its same place every 12 years. And there's 6 months between the two. So you'll see in 2004, when we had the Boxing Day 2004, the big earthquakes and tsunami that happened on Boxing Day. We go forward 6 months and we come to Fukushima, and the passage of the pair that caused Fukushima. That these are all shots of, apart from this one here, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, because this is the one that comes in flies by in November, around about November the 22nd, and actually goes out and causes the 2004 tsunami. 2004, yeah, 2004 Boxing Day tsunami. That passage here, we're looking at this. This shot came in on as I talk about this because it's so relevant to so many of the shots, because I predicted it. I knew it was coming in, except that, like I always say, I imagine it was going to come in round the sun and come back again, and in reality it came in and went back out from whence it came. It was orbiting something over here, clearly. And we're looking at it from September the 1st, but November the 22nd we cross that path. When this comes around to this point, basically we have a crossing of this point where it is in this position. It comes in and it goes round and we fly by it. That happens every 4 years, except normally what would happen is it would come under the ecliptic plane and then go over the top. But now we're all on the same ecliptic plane. But you can imagine when it more or less comes under the ecliptic plane and goes over the top, it can't come anywhere near us. It's coming close to us. But it's only when we're all sharing the same overall ecliptic that these things come in, and that's what we're experiencing now. That's why, normally these shots would not be massive at all, but this was in 2020. This was last year on the 31st of July 2025. They're massive because we're all very close to all of these systems, and all the planets in these two systems are all coming in almost on the same ecliptic plane, which means that they affect us in many different areas. We are in the biggest point of transition and effect of this big system here. Like I say, that was a shot coming in 2024 in February, and like I say, in February 2023, when I predicted it, when I predicted the big earthquakes in Turkey in the northern hemisphere, and that we'd see the flybys, and we'll look at the models in a shake. But just coming back to this 2004 and 2011, or this 6 year distance between. So we've got these points because every 12 years. Notice that this comes every 4 years, and when it flew out in like I say December 2004, and caused the tsunami. And we'll look at the shots as well. But you'll notice that the elections, all elections, as in the vote days, they all either fall in Chinese years. They kind of fall on. Let's have a look. Let's come back to, before we look at models. Let's come over to this shot here, and just keep this window on of the Chinese zodiac, because you'll notice that rats, dragons, and monkeys, they're the only dates. They're where it's not just all. It's not all just rats and monkeys. It's rats, monkeys, and dragons. And they're the dates that all the elections will be sitting on. Trump was, when was Trump? Trump was a monkey, but he was also because he was elected first of all in November 2016, But then he also came in 2024, which I guess is going to be a dragon. You know, Obama was 2008, and then he was 2012, which is going to be a dragon. Like Trump, who came in. Notice that when we get the dragons, there's more like to be kind of like the 2000 election. Straight after we go to war. 2024, straight after we go to war. You know, 2012 election. You know, basically where, you know, the election comes in and America's going to war, Britain's going to war, NATO's going to war. It's kind of like these two flybys, or these three flybys, because there's a pair on the other side, and then this one on the, and they are 6 months. Like I say, they're 6 months apart in a system that overall. So the big blue one has a 12-year orbit, as in it doesn't have a 12-year orbit. It, like I say, goes 1 calendar month further forward every year, and it's clearly rotating. So it's got a 11-month orbit. The pair have got a 13-month orbit. And this one has got a 4-year orbit. Is that right? Well, actually, let's get this right. It syncs up every 4 years. It syncs up every 4 years. Round about so the last time it synced up, 2016, then 2020. Then 2024, and the last big sequence in this, ironically, so that will be at the end of so you'll get the flyby on the, remember it's the full moon. Remember in 2004, the big tsunami happened on the full moon, on the 26th of December, and so that will be December the 31st at the end of Trump's term. That will be he will have, the election will be supposedly on, you know, November the 5th, 6th, 7th, something like that. He technically has to stand down then, so he becomes lame duck. A lame duck president, whatever they call it, the interim period between the new president, unless of course he's changed the whole system and turned it all upside down and brought down the complete collapse of the American system, to completely destroyed the republic as it was, and a whole new system comes about, because we've got to remember that this whole system started. Just going to let that travel. This whole system started in 1781. This whole system started in 1781, as in the electoral system or the presidential system, as in it was ratified in 1781, and then the first, I guess, when was Washington, when was George Washington first elected? About 1781 was when it was ratified, which was the year Uranus was discovered. And so, and this is this. This is what you've been calling Uranus. This is what you've been calling Neptune. This is what you've been calling Pluto. This is the big blue one that appears, that you can't believe, that it is like that you just cannot. It cannot be. It cannot be allowed. It cannot be. It's like a part of a system that we cannot. Even if a million of us, even if probably 100 million of us look at it, we can't see it or believe it. We can't touch it. We deny it on every level. It's like it's like it's like Judas or something like that. It's like some kind of something that when you are completely locked into a cult, you can't see it. You just can't see it. You can't see the effects of it. You know what I mean? It's untouchable, unseeable. It's no matter how consistent. Even though like I say, when for Uranus was given an 84-year orbit, and then Neptune is given 2 times 84-year orbit, and then Pluto's given a 3 times 84-year orbit, and now the big blue one comes in 84 years after Uranus. Oh, sorry, after Pluto. Just on clockwork, just as we'd expect, because of the patterns that we see, and we can't touch it. We just can't touch it. Most of humanity is locked into another Jesus story that's been thrown in over the top, that has been used as a mechanism to deliver war and division onto this planet. And it's such a powerful cult that it rules over everything else really at the moment, that it's taking us into it's taking us into a crazy place. We can see that every election sits over that period, and we can see that the entire election period has been mapped around the flyby of this object, and we can see how that we have one object which is basically, I still haven't truly worked out. I think I have on some levels, but I think it's it travels faster than the other objects because its orbit's much closer to its primary. Whatever these objects are all orbiting, which I'm assuming is a red dwarf-like planet that emits very little light. It's not like a sun, or it's very concealed through high technology. We've got to understand that, when we see the pair flying and they hold that position as the pair coming in, and we've had a lot of pictures. Let's come over to the model and just see if we can see and just look at some of the shots of pairs. That was a shot of the pair, but they were too distant and you can't really see them. But there was not the best shot of the pair. November the 23rd. You see, that's the big. This is the one that's on the one that Alex Luhan caught on the 1st of September 2019, the one I've just been talking about, that syncs up every 4 years. It's a cosmic day. Politically, it's a big cosmic day. The whole election system is built over the top of this flyby. I've done that one. Obviously, that is I'm just looking for actually, that's not the flyby that I was looking for. This is probably the better model to see the pair. Because I showed you in the last model, didn't I? I showed you an incredible picture of the pair. We looked at that one. Obviously, Becky Lewis's shot on the that was a Becky Lewis shot. But then I said, look out for it, and 100 days later, the shot came in. Do you remember I talked about on the 28th of maybe that was not in this model. That's not one in this model. I'm so sorry. Some of them are in, but that was obviously the repeat of. This is just after Trump's election, and we see the plate in the southern hemisphere, in Christchurch in New Zealand, rising up, what, nearly 2 meters. Imagine if that was the ocean floor that dropped 2 meters. That was under the ocean. It would have been a massive, massive, massive tsunami that would have wiped out much of New Zealand. But actually, the plate itself came up rather than the oceans going down, rather than that happening under the ocean. But notice it's right at that key point, the Trump's election, and then obviously when Trump, you get all the earthquakes around Fukushima again and that sort of stuff, and then we see the we even see the red dwarf planet. But I'm of a mind that that is the same object surrounded by cloud. It's just we're so close to it, we see the big object itself that syncs up every 4 years, and then we get that shot as well. But I'm of a mind that that is the next object coming in, or it's it's very difficult to say, because we're at that juncture where we're at a major kind of like we're at a major juncture where we've got if you like, we've got objects coming in this way, and we've got this one coming out that way. Can you see that? I don't know if you can see that, but it's we've got these main corridors. We don't have any of these sort of corridors in the standard model. We don't really have any of these fundamental corridors, because we don't really have a cosmic direction for our sun, and so we don't really have these fundamental corridors of things coming in and going out because of the movements of our sun. But anyway, we have this in between these two. These things all revolve around 12 years. 12 is the big cycle that they all come back to, and half of them are 6 months apart from the others. It's just a wobble. But I didn't find the pair as I wanted to find them. I'm sure I will find other shots of the pair, and we'll see, because I've got lots and lots of shots of the pair. But this reoccurring pattern of the pair, that that was a shot I wanted to show the pair. That was a classic of the pair as well. There's been really quite a few over the years. I've just got so many shots. I try and build them into models so I can reference them more easily, because every day there's more and more fantastical shots coming in. And I've been doing it since 2014, 2015. But what's interesting is that for the pair to fly and hold their positions next to each other for a very long period of time, over potentially hundreds of years, thousands of years, we don't see any other system doing that. We don't see like Earth and Venus running parallel when they go around the sun. We don't see Earth and Mars. We don't see that. For two objects to be at a different diameter away from their orbiting primary, that was like us orbiting the sun, whatever these objects are orbiting, a dwarf planet, for them to be holding that position, it smacks of intelligent design. It smacks of intelligent design. For all of these things to hold the numerology they hold, it's when you look at the moon, you think about the moon, and you think about how you always see the same face of the moon, and there's cycles in the moon. And just, remember, 22nd of November, that critical date, just before the election the following year. That's, on that passage on the 22nd of November, that's when Kennedy was actually assassinated. But just staying with this moon idea, we obviously see this wobble in the moon. Liberation, I think they called it, but it's there, and this article also brings reference, or this AI answer to this: does the moon have a wobble? And talking about the 18.6 year wobble that also is there. I find that interesting because that 18.6 is kind of like because every 4 years we get a syncing up, we end up with this. The moon has these odd patterns as it is, that it takes a time for things to come around. So we see these odd patterns within the moon, and there's very odd patterns that you can start exploring when you start playing, like how often a new year appears on the 31st of December. And what the point, the next, how many years later you have to go before you get a full moon on the 31st of December, and how these odd little patterns that we see, and yet we can identify these odd little, like this 18.6 year, this other little wobble that they've discovered that exists on an 18.6 year cycle. And so we kind of see, and for me, that these all, you'll notice that throughout this, you'll see that, like I say, the tsunami that happened in 2004 happened on the new moon. Happened on the full moon. On the 28th of September 2018, I think it was, when I say, you can't tell me there's not going to be oceanic anomalies, or it could have been 2019 now, actually. But the tsunami struck on either 2000, whichever one it was, but it was either the full or the new moon. And then we come around to the other side, like I say, to this side of the solar system, when these twins are affecting us. And for some reason, the seismology, the biggest seismology, Fukushima, happened on the first quarter neat moon. The Sichuan earthquake that happened on the 12th of May, that was massive earthquake, which affected by these objects, happened. It happened on the first neat moon. When we saw the big sighting last year and the tsunami happened, I said, look out for it, it's going to happen on the first neat moon. This thing happens. Sure enough, this tsunami happens on the first neat moon, as in this shot, which is the same as this shot, but this was in 2020. This is the same object, it's just dropped back. Every year it drops back, and we get all the sightings and that sort of stuff. And we seem to it seems to come in really fast, and then it like in 2000 and let's come to this model, and let's go back to 2010 as we come round. This is the 8.8 earthquake in Chile, and then the kind of like on the 27th of February 2010 and the 26th of February 2010, the big Icelandic eruption that shuts down all the air travel. And we're very close to this object. Then we come round again a year later, and we're going to come to 11th of March 2011. Well, these aren't going to sync up again next to Earth until 2023. 22, we get right, 22, we get that. There's the Earth coming around the Sun, and we get the close flyby, and then we come to 2023, and this is what I told you you'd see. And obviously in this model, I I showed you that same thing. It's just I've got these two, as I always say, I've got these two the wrong way round, and brought new things into this model which are more correct, and I've created more things that are incorrect. But nonetheless, there's aspects that still are holding some truth and relevance. Overall, it's giving us like I say, a ballpark understanding. But to come forward to 2023 again. Remember that shot, World of Signs, on the 22nd of November again, and it blocks out the sun right there, exactly at the corridor we would expect. We learned a lot about this. I've been understanding the fundamental position of all these things coming in and going out since 2014, 2015, or getting an idea of where they're all coming in. And then we've had to go a little bit crazy trying to explore different things and play with different ideas and ponder. And of course, when we come round to this, and we saw that one first of all on the 19th of January, and then that one on the 9th of March, and I said, look out for them. They're going to look like lenticular clouds. I said, look at them. They're on their side. It's a very odd formation, but this is this is the massive dust cloud that comes. This is iron from the dwarf planet that spews out iron. Where our sun spews out photons, this spews out iron, and this iron that it spews out like photons goes into the air, and it gathers around its orbiting bodies, and this gathers up this dust. These things are, like I say, these pair are flying next to each other, and have been since we've been observing them, and evidence of their movements suggests that they've been doing this for a long time. And if they're doing that, like I say, it shows intelligent design. This whole thing has a geometry of numbers which is just absolutely fantastical. The number 12, the number 11, and the number 13 keep appearing in these numbers, and it's like there's a wobble in this system. Now, the reason I brought the moon back, I was going to ask you to think about the moon in this, is, the moon has this same phenomena where we see this same face. Yeah, there is this wobble, but we see the same face, and the planet appears, or the moon appears, the same size as the sun when they're in the sky. Now, some people suggest that it's almost like it's come from Earth, like there's been some kind of massive hit or asteroid or something, and it's hit into Earth, and it's caused this big, when you put a drop of water down into a big, if you drop water down, a droplet of water into a big pool of water, it hits the water, and then a drop comes back up out of the water, plop, and it comes up and then drops back down again. No, it drops back down again. So some people have this idea that actually the reason why you see the same face is because it's kind of locked to the Earth in some sort of fashion, and so what's happened is something's hit the Earth like a droplet, dolloped into the magma of the Earth, and then a big dollop of magma has basically come up and shot up and is suspended. But of course, for it to do that, it wouldn't just be able to go up and then stay there, because imagine taking an orange or an apple, like in Isaac Newton, or whichever way you want to see it, and we throw it up in the air. Would it turn in the air as it was thrown up? Would it go up and stay in the air and hover in front of you, and just like we're suggesting would happen in the moon with the moon, or if we threw the moon up into the air straight up, we would have to then transport it and get it moving in a specific direction to be in orbit. We wouldn't just have to throw the moon and it would stay there. We'd have to throw the moon up and then accelerate it forward to bring it into an orbit. And to keep the same face all the time as it went one loop around the Earth, as it does, it would have to rotate on its axis. With every one rotation round the Earth, it would have to, and does, rotate exactly on its axis. So it is always giving the same face. That smacks of unbelievable intelligent design. All of these systems that have this odd 12 and or should I say this odd 13 in their mathematics, which the moon does, show this incredible level of intelligence. You know, the moon flies like a spaceship. It's the only planet that flies like a spaceship, keeping the same phase, like a plane flying around you, keeping that same phase. These pair also share the same spaceship-like mechanics because they fly together, always together, and they smack of intelligent design. And these three objects, the one that syncs up every 4 years, and these pair, the big blue one sits in between these three objects, a pair on the outside and the big one on the inside and the blue one in between. And the blue one, the big blue one and the big red dwarf planet, they seem to have a wobble between them which drives all of these other twin tail objects. There is genius orbital mechanics, intelligence, absolutely saturated with the movements of these things. They are, I've watched them for years. I can tell you in advance when you're going to get the earthquakes, when you're going to get the sightings, when you're going to get the volcanoes. We struggle to believe any of it, but that seems to be what humanity has got to overcome. We can't believe what we're seeing. We can't believe what's happening. It's all fantastical. It's untouchable. And you know, this one that we're seeing, the furthest one, this one here and here, is, I'm of a mind that this is aerial, as I've talked about in quite a few of my videos. This is why, you know, when I went off to write Laughing Gas and write this story about how Britain is being used as the Trojan horse to break up the European alliance and feed Europe into a war against Russia just to start the Holy Crusade in the Middle East, and how this whole thing will unfold, and how this is no different to what happened in the days of Shakespeare, and the inspiration of this story. This is what, if you know, where the Spanish Inquisition came in 1588 and were just, you know, and then, like I say, you have kind of like Sir Francis Drake playing bowls. When this comes in, he won't engage in the fight. And we can see how we're desperately trying to get Iran to attack at this critical point. This was all about trying to bring the whole Middle East to absolute war at the point of a biggest flyby. But it is one hell of a risk. You see, the American economy has been built on war. When we went through the whole process of, in Britain we called it decimalisation, and in America, you know, you broke away from the gold standard, because it was all dollars and no cents. And so it becomes, when you take away the backbone of gold to be the benchmark of the value of your currency, when you take away the gold value behind the currency, or in the case of Britain, you take away the silver value that underpins a currency, there's got to be something else that holds the currency's value. And if there's no gold, underpinning the value of the currency. So you're buying the world's produce and you're expecting them to sell that produce. The only thing that can underpin the value of a currency, if there's no wealth to underpin it, as in gold or silver, then you have to use war. You have to use piracy. You have to use aggression. You have to steal and pillage and use all sorts of different reasons that give you your justification to take, and religious doctrines are often fantastic, aren't they? This is what Hitler claimed, that Iran or Persia was born from the Aryan race, which came from Europe, that we were that Persia was the offspring of the Aryan race, that Persia was our homeland, our true homeland. And of course we said that was evil, and that his intentions were fascist, and so we stopped him at great cost. And this was the Second World War, because of his Aryan beliefs that the Middle East was all an extension of the European white man. And then of course, straight after the Second World War, it was decided that Israel was truly the home of the Jews, and that white Europeans could claim it as their homeland. And so it created almost the very thing, in some ways, that supposedly a very similar sort of thing that Hitler was claiming. It was both sides seeming to be in opposition, but bringing about the same thing. It was, and we can see this as a Jewish agenda, but, as Biden often said, he was a very strong Catholic. He said you don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist. And so this seems very much more like a Zionist agenda, and seeming as Biden isn't Jewish, he's Catholic, I see this as a kind of like much more of a Catholic Zionist thing than I do as a Jewish Christian thing. It's a very odd thing that's playing out here, but we're in the middle of this great attempt to drive this whole world into all-out war. And the reason I wrote Laughing Gas wasn't to say that this big thing was going to happen. It was to say that unprecedented peace will be waged on this earth. That this may be the agenda that is being driven, this is not necessarily how things will pan out. And it is understood from my understanding when I wrote Laughing Gas, and the message that I got that showed me all of this, that enabled me to see all this, is that we are not a race of war, that we are being subverted with war, and that we are being given great assistance to get through this time. But we have to see it for what it is, to navigate through it, to get out of it and get beyond it. So it seems like it is all going to happen, but it is actually all a bit of a joke as well. We're seeing through it, we're seeing how ridiculous it all is. And And we're waking up to the bigger system that we're really in, some of us. And this is all about choosing your gods and choosing your souls. This is what this is all about. It's a big point where duality goes into singularity. This is the point where we kind of are effectively both our ego and our higher selves. This is when we're a point of duality, and this is the point where we go into singularity, and we can only be one or the other. We cannot be both anymore. We have to either become one or the other, our higher selves, or whatever you want to call the other side. The other side would probably also call itself the higher self. They both have Jesus, except that one side of it has Jesus as a means to go to war, and one side has Jesus as a means to go to peace. One see it as a point to judge their own actions, and others see it as a point to judge other people's actions. So, it just depends where we are in our soul evolution as to which God is our God. This isn't about our higher selves or about our lower selves. This is about the living, breathing human animal and its choices, and the cult or the culture that it is tied to because of its beliefs. As in, one of the soul attachments attached to each human being will be leaving, and one will be staying. And this process, it's in Laughing Gas, it opens with Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. Or Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. 80 men and 80 more could not place Humpty where he was before. And it all started with Humpty sitting on a wall. Now we can see Humpty being the big cannon, but that fell off the wall during the Civil War. But we can also see Humpty being the man who sat and didn't join the Roundheads and didn't join the Cavaliers, didn't join the parliamentarians, and didn't join the Royalists. He was piggy in the middle. He was enemy to them all. It was like not being, you're either in one side or in the other, but if you're in neither, you've got two enemies, not one. So we can see it like that, but we can also see it. You can see it in multiple lights that we sometimes don't choose to see anything. We choose to pretend we're not here. We choose to pretend it's not going on, that it doesn't really involve us, that we haven't somehow got a voice in this, that we're powerless to do anything in this. And we claim, there's nothing you can do. Nothing you can do to change this. And that may be true. But it may not be true. And I'm of a mind that we've all done more than we can ever believe to change this already. That this is our second time, if not more than that. That we've all doing our little thing, and that the whole Trump agenda, which he's pushing into place, is the most laughable agenda now. That, he'll have his fanatical believers that will follow him. But it's too much of a joke now. The whole thing is too much of a joke. And in my opinion, this is a desperate, this Trump, in his whole process, was to desperately try and start this whole thing in the Middle East. But the whole thing now is to pull back and see. The greatest threat to the US dollar at the moment is the euro. And if the dollar goes down, it has to take the euro with it. And the only way this can go forward, the only way that America and Britain can succeed out of this, is to feed Europe into a massive war against Russia and break the European Union and break Russia and break the Middle East, and use all of these forces to fold in and then come in at the last stages and sort it all out. But if Europe doesn't take the bait, Britain could be led straight into the biggest war against Russia. It could be led into such a terrifying situation, and the rest of Europe, it may not be in the world's interest for it to engage in this. And it, it's who's left holding the baby at the end of it. Who's left in this situation that is most vulnerable? Because once this is flown by and this whole system comes to an end, you understand, at the end of 400 years, this began in the kind of 1600s. It's a big 400-year cycle. Let me just try and show you that. Just for those, in case any of you haven't seen it. But I'll use... I'll actually use... is it best with this model? Let's go back to, maybe that's not really the best model. We'll go back to 262, earthquakes all across Africa, all across Europe, all across Asia, 3 days of darkness and the downfall of the Roman Empire. This is where the whole Roman Empire fell. And you'll notice that we come right forward. This is where we are right now. We've got all these same, the big dwarf planet and our sun. And they're going to come back to their close proximity after to the same place. It takes 1800 years. See how they're coming up to the 1500s, and they're starting to sync up. We're starting to get these incredible sightings of this other planet, and Galileo's time, and Isaac Newton's time, and William Herschel's time, and 1846 the discovery of Pluto, and then. And then the Carrington event, 1859, and 1930, Pluto, and and then we are coming up to this sinking point where these two objects are so close to each other that objects from, whether you want to call it Herculobus or whatever you want to call the big blue planet or the big red dwarf planet that the blue planet absorbs, the big blue planet orbits. Carlos Rada said they would pass on the 20th of January, 1939. You remember the big passage that we had on the 20th of January, 2017, on Trump's inauguration. These kind of like, these bizarre kind of like, these bizarre flybys. And the 20th of January, 1606, when we have the big tsunami in Western Europe, which was potentially so much bigger. I'm of mind that was the big tsunami that caused the big mud flood that the Spanish Inquisition and everything else that we saw after that, after the big tsunami, was the big mud flood that caused the downfall of Tartaria. You see, if there is this 400-year kind of cycle, let's look at another model, which is this model, and take this model back to that same. We come up here to 262 again, but we see it in a different way here. I show it in a different way, and we come up to there after about 1,000 years or so. We're completely on the opposite side, but we start coming into like the 1600s, the Copernicus times, the Kepler times, the Galileo times, where we're all starting to see these all these crazy theories about how the solar system works. Suddenly we're all jumping out of the flat Earth model, and we're seeing these incredible sightings. We're calling it, the first dwarf planet, Mirror, before the some 6,000 dwarf planets that we've added to that list. And then it's going to be, you know, in Galileo's time, he's going to call it Jupiter, and he's going to call it the moons of Jupiter and the moons of Saturn. Suddenly we're getting all these spectacular sights. We're going to say this is all because of the discovery of the telescope. Galileo's discovery of the telescope, which is a very basic, rudimentary, just two pieces of glass wrapped in a piece of leather. It's nothing. We're not talking about super powerful. We're talking about equal to the zoom on the first iPhone. You know, this is really, really basic. But you can understand that this kind of arriving to this point, and then what I show here as we get closer and closer, and we start getting much, much more influence in between the syncing up of 1930 to 39, or 1939 to 45, where we get the massive, really close phases, and we get all the volcanoes going off. Remember 1944, just before the end of the Second World War, Vesuvius going absolutely crazy. That's literally what we are about to see. We are literally about to see in around about June the 21st, when we see this massive sinking up with the first neat moon on the 21st of June. It falls right on the 21st of June, right on the summer solstice this year. But we're going to see something else here as well, because we are seeing that we are coming to, after this point, you can imagine when it keeps going, this object goes past, as in our sun goes clean past this Pluto, this Uranus, this Neptune, this big Herculobus, whatever you want to call this system. We come to the end of this system. We come to the end, just like in The Last President. You know, Ingersoll Lockwood's book about the last president. We come to the point of the end of the 4-year cycle. We come to the end of this. Our sun will keep going past this and coming out of this range, just like it did when you go back to where I showed you this model begins. Let's go back to that, and we come. Go on, Shanti. And we come, which is here. Well, actually, we come round to here. There's 262, and we see our sun. It just moves away. We come out of this range. We are literally coming into this point here now, where we move away from it again. We come out of the need for the electoral system. The whole American system has been built on this. And now we come into this phase. We come to the kind of last president point, where we come out of that cycle. But this cycle, when we look at it from this model's perspective, which is why I built this model. Let's take again this model back to 262, a different way of looking at this. But the reason I built this was to try and make you understand that when we come closer to these systems, as in when we come to this point and we came close, the axis of our sun shifted very slightly because of our proximity, and it will shift back as we move out of these systems. We will get a very slight shift in our axis, and I'm of a mind that what will happen is that slight shift as we move further away from the sun. Or should I say, as we move further away, as our sun moves further away from Herculobus, our Earth is sitting true to this system's orbital axis, if you like. Like our Earth is going round the sun, but it sits at an angle, and that angle is the truth of the ecliptic plane of the big system we actually orbit. But when we come away from Herculobus, our axis will slightly go closer to the axis of the sun's, which means that when we have this 400-year big cycle that started with the Copernicus system, which is what we're really in now. We're not in Isaac Newton's model. Remember, Isaac Newton gave us back the Copernicus model. When he postulated his idea, he didn't postulate one model. He postulated two models. He postulated a static sun model, where the sun is in the middle and all the planets going in a perfect circle. And he gave us back that model. That's what Copernicus gave us, and that is what Isaac Newton gave us back. Remember, Kepler came after Isaac Newton. Kepler came after Copernicus. Isaac Newton came after Kepler, but Isaac Newton gave us back Isaac Newton's basic model, giving us the standard model as we understand it of the planets moving round an immovable object, as in an immovable sun. So we have all the planets in a nice, pretty circle as we understand them. But he also said that nothing in the observed universe is static. So there's the standard model. It exists around a static sun, but nothing in the observed universe moves like nothing in the observed universe is static as we observe it. So what he's saying is, yeah, we live in a static sun model, but nothing in the universe observed is static. But there you go. But hey, there's a movable primary model, which is I often show, which is the model on the pound note, which is the model on the 50p coin, which is the on the 50p coin dedicated to Isaac Newton. He built two models. We can choose which one we want to be in, but it means that we've been in a 400-year big cycle. And that 400-year big cycle means that when we come out of it, there's a change to our axis. And that means that certain areas that are under snow now, like Greenland, could very potentially come out of the snow. That it spends 400 years of 1800 years. That certain areas on the globe spend as much as 400 years, the whole cycle of these planets under the snow, which means that whatever is under Greenland, that whole continent is, and potentially much of Antarctica, is going to thaw. We come out of a big system. This is why there's so much attention on Antarctica, because there's, or specifically Greenland, because if there was a massive event and much of the northern hemisphere went underwater and was destroyed, and then was repurposed, and we call this kind of repurposing of much of this of those who've repurposed, if you like, the architecture of the ancient world, or the world that was here before the tsunami and after the tsunami, after the mud floods. Those who follow the mud flood stories. And I found them quite fascinating. I found them really, really interesting, and the evidence is just overwhelming. But those who've dabbled in that must be wondering what happens when is Iceland, is Greenland about to come out from under the ice with this shift. And this is not a flip. The axis doesn't flip as we've been led to believe. That's not really what happens. What happens is that the Earth itself flips. It goes from the northern hemisphere to the southern hemisphere of the solar system in that the big system that we actually, our sun orbits. So our sun, our whole sun, is going from north to south of a much bigger system, and this is what gives us these polarity differences that we see in magma that has solidified, and we see these changes. In my opinion, I might be completely wrong. Maybe it is the whole axis of our Earth flipping over, but I think it would be those sort of events would be. I don't think that will happen. I think we are about to see. I think if we were going to have seen a flip, we would have seen it when we were at that central point, when we were seeing the biggest, longest duration volcanoes. You know, the point of actually crossing, if you like, was in 2021, where we just saw the longest duration volcano out of all of them. Do you remember when I just showed you here, and I showed you when we got to 1590, about 1586, 87, 85, we saw La Palma going off, and it was the longest ever duration volcano ever recorded. And then we saw, you remember when I said in 2021, when Iceland went bang in 2021, and it went off for like 4.5, nearly 5 months, and it was the longest duration volcano ever observed. It was a sensation. We were just seeing the most incredible footage of just endlessly spewing magma coming out of an object in the northern hemisphere, travelling, if you like, parallel with our Earth, constantly pulling on our planet, on the water and the magma in our planet, like the moon would pull on our oceans, constantly for like 5 months, and then it stops, and this next object that is also coming in, these two objects, and we get La Palma. Was it La Palma? It was La Palma going bang, and it beats even the records of it going. It had a longer duration. Just the most sensational. We've never seen a volcano. We've never seen such sensational shots of a volcano than La Palma and Iceland in 2021. They broke all the records. Everything you've ever known about volcanoes, all records were broken that year. The longest duration volcanoes, back to back, breaking, like I say, never anything longer. Everything is off the radar. The eruption that's just happened in Kilauea, they're saying it's the 45th eruption. You're like, the 45th eruption? No, it's not. That's the 45th episode since December, either 2023 or 2024. But I think it's 2000. I think it's December 2023. Like I say, what they've done is, rather than saying that's the 40 whatever eruption, that whatever number eruption, what they're doing is they're grouping all these volcanoes together as episodes of a single eruption, so they can make the overall amount of eruptions look far less. Remembering that when our local volcano, a small volcano which produces 80 million tons of carbon dioxide, you know, when this whole skirmish with Iran went off, and it was just like, oh my god, they've just released 5 million tons of carbon dioxide, with all the kind of like all the machinery and everything else, and they've produced to make all these bangs and get everything there, and all the ships and everything. They've produced 5 million tons of carbon dioxide, and we're like, oh my god, we've got to build some more nuclear power stations on some tsunami hotspots quickly. And yet our small volcanoes like Stromboli is chucking out 80 million tons of carbon dioxide on a single eruption, because it is a small volcano. It's not like 200 or 300 million tons of carbon dioxide. You think this is all this rock and magma shooting up into the sky? It doesn't come back down. There's no massive rocks coming down over Sicily. Yeah, there's a fine dust that's coming down, but most of this is getting burnt off. It's got the heat. It's got all the substance, it's got the fuel, and it's got the oxygen in the air. It's got the 3 primary things it needs for this fission process to occur. Air, fuel, and heat. It's got everything it needs for this big eruption to create all this carbon dioxide and this massive burn-off, and the sulfur dioxide, and all the other different types of dioxides that come off this process, or oxides that come off this process because of this burning, all these rocks that are not going to come back down again, that are going to get burnt off. And so we are seeing the massive manipulation and the massive concealing of a massive system that is affecting us massively, and we're seeing it all come to a conclusion. We're coming to the end of this. We're coming to the point of the last president. Like I say, that Ingersoll Lockwood, when he wrote about when he wrote his 3 books, The Laconics of Coal in the 1890s, The Laconics of Coal, The Adventures of Baron von Trump, and The Last President. Why we can understand that Trump is going to be the last president, because they don't have to do this interim period anymore, because we're going to get past it, and then Ariel won't come back round. These systems, don't get me wrong, we've got this going on for a while longer, but we are certainly going to be out of the range of the innermost orbiting object, the presidential flyby that the whole American electoral system has been built on, and which was the one that brought about the downfall of the Roman Empire. The one the Romans are absolutely terrified. The one that everything is built around. This whole system, everything that is going on in your lives, ultimately is built around these big flybys of this big system. This is what everyone is terrified, and it is complex, but the mathematics of it are just incredible. This is not me guessing. This is showing the observations of this over and over and over again. The seismology and the crazy storms and everything else that comes into play. So you can go back to 2014 and you can just kind of see the kind of seismology around the kind of like then the biggest seismology is kind of like April the 1st and June the 23rd. You're seeing the same thing. The same pair is affecting us at the same point. This is going back. This is 12 years before. Except that this is this affects both, because this is you'll see that also you're going to get massive flooding in in the southern aspect of South America on the Atlantic side. This is all because of the excitement in the division between the African plate and the American plate. The fault line that splits the two. That excitement as a result of the oceans, first of all, being pulled down to the south, but that effect on the globe, as that just distorts all the plates and changes the whole shape of the Earth, causing, just like, do you remember on the 26th and the 27th of February 2010, you get the massive earthquake in Chile, but then systematically you get the massive volcano going off in right the very northern aspect of the globe as well. But the moisture that comes off the Atlantic as a result of the fault line below the Atlantic getting excited, heating the ocean, sending all the moisture up, and then all that moisture coming down across like South America, causing unbelievable flooding, and at the same time you're getting rebounding on both sides, or north and south at the same point. Up in Alaska, big earthquake, big volcanoes happening up in Alaska, big earthquakes, and then all down in the south and crazy flooding. Closest point of the biggest ocean where the biggest change is actually happening. It's all the same patterns are there. You can predict exactly where and when. June is June the 21st, and as we lead up to that period of time, in and around that, but June the 21st, and then this specific flyby that we've just had, like I say, it came in on, it did the third quarter moon, and then it did the central points, as in the new moon, and then it did the first quarter moon. And so we could see the same thing. It could be the same way. It could be the same thing, but it's a big cosmic time. It's a time to be really, really aware. The size of these flybys now are looking massive. Earth is coming around the front edge of the sun on the 21st of June, in my opinion. And this other object, this Ariel, is going to the furthest orbiting of the pair is going to also be right in the front edge of the sun as the sun's moving forward. We're all going to bunch up together at that point. It's going to be an interesting time. So good luck through that time. I don't know where you're going to be, don't know what you're going to do, but watch the signs, navigate around it, and do your own process in working out which side of the fence that you're on in this. You know, are you a peaceful warrior, or are you a warring warrior? And if you're just worrying about it, which I spend so much time worrying about it all, you know what I mean? Are you trying to bring all those worries what's your intentions in this? You know, it's time to really track your own intentions and charter your journey to what you're doing to bring peace to this situation. And whatever you're going to do, really think about doing it now. Really think about everything you can do to bring peace to this situation. Because if you're with this warring agenda, you have to go with that. You know, this is just Judgment Day. This is what this is. You know, we are all deciding which side of the fence that we belong. You know, there's no right, there's no wrong, there's no good, there's no bad. It's just which vibrational place that you exist in, which culture you're really part of. And for us all to go with our respective gods, which is what we've all done. This is the journey of Earth, is finding your way and finding your God and going with that God and experiencing that. You might change your mind. You might go with that God and suddenly realise that down the line that didn't really serve you, and we've all got to go with our gods. And for many of you, you know, Trump is that God. Some of you, it's a different thing. Whichever is your God, go with that. You know, but giving so much power to this now has created a situation, and you've got to decide whether or not whether he's lied and deceived you, or whether this really what you wanted. You know, many of you maybe wanted this. You know, lots and lots of people in Britain just loved Trump, hated Europe, couldn't wait, and they're still waiting for the kind of for us to appear in the for the Britain to appear in the Bahamas, and the grass skirts to appear, and yeah, no, with the start changing axis, maybe that will happen. Maybe it will get so much warmer in here that we all start wearing grass skirts. Be the change you want to see. But here we go. But there's the first of the pair. We've just flown by it, so I just thought I'd keep you posted on that. And again, sorry my videos are so long, but they are what they are, and you know, we are. You know, and last thing I just want to say is just, you know, you've got next year. We've got the first neat moon, instead of June, it's going to come in May, and then 2028 you've got April. First neat moon, or more like the new moon, in April. And obviously Trump's inauguration on the 22nd of November 2028, and like I say, on the that is on the December the 31st, on the full moon, December the 31st, 2028. That to me is the last presidential election. That's the end of it. A whole new system can come into operation after that, depending on which soul group prevails in this. That is the end of the big cycle. After this, yeah, that's where the re-emergence of, it'll be barely 100 years after that. Barely. It'll be 50 years. But it won't even be that. But a very short period after that, it's difficult to say. Greenland will come out of the ice. And all the technology that's been hiding, that we had in place, that was taken from us and hidden from us, all of the Tartarian technology, all that was covered in the snow after that big incident, everything has all been sat there, preserved under the ice. Technology that we have forgotten about. Stuff that was left there. The massive canal systems that are up in the northern aspect of Greenland will, whole thing, everything will all come back into the form. A whole new age is about to begin if we do not destroy the planet in World War III. Whole wonder of centuries to live through and explore. If we can get past this tiny little excursion, planetary excursion. Honey in the heart, 1,000 thank yous. Thank you for following me this far. All the love in the world. Good luck for you this period. Be somewhere sensible for the 21st, won't you? Please. And patience through this whole thing. It's been a big cycle. Take care. All the love in the world. Bye bye.